Hello, this is Christina Barr. You're watching Black Tea News. Hello, welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and today we're going to be talking about the White House Correspondence Dinner. There's a lot of people talking about it. I'm not going to break down the whole thing. Actually, I didn't see the whole thing. I saw some clips, and I was listening to Ben Shapiro's commentary about it. I do think there were actually some good jokes from Biden. I know people don't want to laugh at Fox News, but I actually thought he had some good jokes. But there were some other things that I saw that I'm going to tackle, particularly this segment they had about critical race theory. And, how fun is it to fact check comedians' jokes? But it was just a blatant lie. So I want to go through it and talk about it. And he did some digs about Clarence Thomas. So a black comedian, he made some digs at Clarence Thomas. And the particular digs that he made, they're just racist. So I want to talk about it. So we'll get to that. Also, Chuck Todd interviewed one of the candidates for president and talking about gender identity. And he's just really dumb, shilling kind of questions about the gender identity stuff. I wish they would grill Biden as hard as they try to grill other people about this kind of stuff. But of course, they like Biden and send their questions in advance so he can have them sitting in his pocket when he answers them. And also, man, a city councilman a white guy identifies now as a person of color who is a lesbian. So people are upset about it. People are applauding it, and we will talk about that today. So those are the subjects, the things we're covering. So before we jump into everything, I want to encourage you guys to go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on my website, different articles, different videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please at blacktnews.com, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com. Cost of stream, cost of my run, my website, all that good stuff. So if you can support, take care of some of that overhead and other things like that, I very, very, very much do appreciate it. There's some needs that I do have at Black Tea News. There's some equipment and other things that, I'd like to get and upgrade and other things. So if you can support that way, the Bible says you have not because you ask not. So I am asking if you can and you're able. If you're not, I understand. But I do appreciate you watching. I do appreciate you commenting, telling other people to watch. All those things really do help us. So thank you very much for that. Check out other stuff that we have in our store, like the I'm Not the Victim You're Looking For. A lot of people really like that shirt. I'm wearing one of my shirts today. The Constitution is a Glorious Liberty document there with Frederick Douglass from his what is the 4th of July to a slave speech. Let me just pop up the actual picture of it. So that's what I'm wearing right now. I love this shirt. So you guys can check that out at blacktnews.com. Also got other things like the mugs and so on, like the You Are Not That Special. So you guys can pick up merch as well. That does also support. Also, I also have my book, Of Course God Is Blatantly Against Abortion. I was going to show the picture, but I didn't change it out. It still says coming soon. So I'll just show you what the physical actual copy looks like. And isn't that a beautiful cover? My sister made it for me. At least did the illustration, and she did such a beautiful job. Tina's text portrait. Sometimes she pops in the chat. So if you see her, click on her face and then go follow her on YouTube. She does stuff where she's painting all the time, speed painting, speed doing text portraits or whatever, and streams. And so go ahead and check out her stuff. She just did such an amazing job. But anyway, the book is it covers biology. It also covers theology, obviously, and philosophy and all kinds of different things. And so, which so many things that people push back on, I'm like, it's in the book, it's in the book, it's in the book, it's in the book. And not just like biblical things either. Like someone the other day was like, they have this idea. They posted a comment that said something like, someone brought up foster care. And I'm like, foster care has nothing to do with abortion, and I started like listing like all the reasons why, and why the talking points that people say, because a lot of the stuff that people say kind of comes down to what you think they'd be better off if we killed them, or hypothetical suffering is somehow worse, that we kill people for hypothetical possible suffering versus like known suffering. Like, things just don't make sense. So I did a thread on YouTube about it, and then people are like, no, they have a point. Like, no, I care about people who are right in front of me rather than people who are like off in the distance, or people you don't think about, or potential people. They keep saying potential use. A fetus is like, and if you're in the womb, you're not a potential life. You're a life with potential. You're already here. You exist. You're on planet Earth, etc. But I understand the point that you care about who's in front of you, like who's taking up kind of your mindset right in front of you. But that doesn't just go for like, that's just in general. Like, if God was like, hey, like if I was pregnant and God was like, trolley problem, your baby in your womb can live, or this random pro-choicer, who is okay with killing, millions of babies a year. Like, one of them is going to live, one's going to die. Like, you got to choose. It's a trolley problem. Who do you think, people pick? There's people out there who pick their dog over someone else, over another human being. So yes, people in practice sometimes care about other people more than other folks that they don't know. But that's not really the question with abortion. The question of abortion is, does someone have to die? That's the question. So if no one has to die, why kill them? There are scenarios where you can say, well, what about the life of the mother, or some kind of like bodily harm? Yeah, that's like 0.2% of abortions. So I'll give you that. I'll grant you that. But the rest of them, like, do they have to die is the question. So there's all sorts of philosophical things, and I try to cover everything and be like expansive as possible. There's definitely other topics within like the philosophy that I guess I could probably span off and do an issues just book about it, but a lot of stuff is in here. So I thank you guys for buying it. I very much do appreciate it. In the category, it got like it probably got to number 1, but I wasn't looking at it at the time, but at least as high as number 4 that I saw. So in like a like particular category with like church and politics, like church and state kind of stuff. So thank you very much. Keep buying. You can get it on paperback, you can get it on ebook on Barnes and Noble, or you can get it on Amazon. So thank you very much, and I hope it's a blessing to you guys. I really, really sincerely do. So again, thank you. That's available. I do write other books as well. So that's one of my 2 nonfiction books out, but the rest are fiction, and I got children's books. I got all sorts of stuff, but go ahead and check that out. I'm about to release another fiction book very soon, in time for Comic-Con. So I'll let you guys know when I finish my book cover, because it's coming very fast. So thank you guys. Anyway, I do not have a meme for you guys today. I'm going to jump right into it, but we're talking about the White House Correspondence Dinner, and it's supposed to be a joke, so maybe someone out there would think it's funny. I don't think it's funny. And I'm not saying they didn't have some funny jokes. I thought some of them were actually funny, but I don't think Biden is the best at delivering jokes, but some of his jokes I thought were actually funny. I'm like, oh, that's kind of, maybe not laugh out loud funny, maybe kind of funny in principle, but some of them are awful, some of them are okay. Now this one though, from the actual comedian who hosted it, Roy Wood Jr. Was kind of ridiculous. Well, first of all, let me play this one before I get into the big CRT segment, because this is one that kind of sums up how kind of awful this event is, and how awful the people are, how awful the press is. So I want to show you this one first, and then we'll get to the other one.
For me, the easiest scandal to follow was the Trump document scandal. That was the one that was easy to follow. It was simple. There's some stuff that's supposed to be in the White House that ain't. And the media, y'all did y'all's job. Y'all jumped on that story. As soon as the Trump document story broke, everybody was down in Mar-a-Lago. We're reporting live from the documents. And when I found them, and then we found out Joe Biden had documents too. And it was like, oh, it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. Everybody got documents. Everybody got documents. Mike Pence has some documents. Oh, everybody. Oh, look, a Chinese spy balloon. Would you look at that? Ooh.
Okay. Why is that funny? Like, why is that funny? Like, you're the president, like everyone's looking around like, ah ha ha, we're such hacks. It's hilarious. No, this is like a thing that you guys thought was pretty darn serious, that you were ready for Trump to go down for, or pretending like you were ready for him to go down for. Maybe you obviously didn't care if he went down for it. Like, you just want him to go down, right? So you had the documents, the searching of Mar-a-Lago and all that stuff. So then it comes out about Biden, and all of a sudden he's right. It was like, oh, it's not such a big deal, and we're doing it differently because we're cooperating. Like, okay, but you had these for longer, obviously. Biden had documents from when he was a senator. Like, so why do you have these documents? And now it's suddenly not a big deal, but they're just laughing like, oh, and Biden's just like, oh. And I understand this is the White House Correspondence Dinner. What else are you going to do? Look kind of ticked off, but I guess kudos for making the joke, but everyone else just kind of participating and laughing like, like, oh, we're such shills. Like, it embodies like everything that's wrong with our corporate media. Ben Shapiro said it's kind of like the Hunger Games being at the Capitol, and it is like that. And I also think it's messed up. Like, the room, there was a lot. I don't know how it is like every year. I'm assuming it's there are less Republicans that probably attended years before, but there's quite a few Republicans in the room who were there, and I don't mean just like the handful of maybe like press people who, like Fox News people who just decided to show up at the correspondence. They got roasted, man. And I mean, like, the chair of the RNC was there, and I'm like, I don't know, maybe that's something that they always kind of go to or try to attend, but to me, I'm just kind of like, I don't know, if someone thought I was like evil, like legitimately evil, and I don't think all these people legitimately think that, but that's just stuff that they say. But if that's the stuff that they say, I just wouldn't go out to eat with them and hang out at a party. Like, I just I just wouldn't. I just would, like, we wouldn't hang out after school. We wouldn't enjoy things together. Like, we could be cordial together at work or something, but this isn't a work thing. It's their like Met Gala or something. Like, I just wouldn't want to hang out with you guys at a fancy party if you just thought I was like literally like a threat to democracy and destroying democracy and trying to control women and all that, like all the stuff that they say, like trying to kill all the trans people. Like, if you literally like believe that, and I don't believe these people believe that, that's just what they say, but if they have such poor integrity or lack of character that those are the things that they'll say, I just wouldn't be like, yeah, this is really a place I want to go hang out and mingle with with these folks at. I just wouldn't want to do that there. So I don't think I would go and show up. But people are this is DC. People are fake. My sister worked at the RNC for a bit, and she lived out in DC, and she said it's the fakest place on earth. And you know how you introduce yourself in normal places and you say, hi, I'm such and such, you say your name. In DC, you learn to say, like, hi, my name is such and such, I work for X, because everyone is trying to figure out like immediately how they can use you. They want to know if you're going to be of some value, some kind of strategic partner or whatever. So you introduce your name is as important as what you do. Like, right off the bat, there is no like get to know me. It's like, no, can I use you? It's just not a good place full of good people that do good things. Like, they don't. And the fakeness is I just couldn't deal with it. I mean, I guess if you had to deal with it, you deal with it. And sometimes you mingle with folks you don't necessarily like but this is not, someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm like, why go to that, something like that? Like Trump was just like, I'm boycotting, I'm not going. For what? Y'all don't believe in the institutions that y'all like claim to uplift. And Biden said they're not a threat to democracy. I guess they're not a threat to him. If he gets, it's funny, like, because if you press him, then they'll be like, oh, you're like Fox News. That's what Kamala Harris said to Charlemagne, I think it was, had an interview, and he was like questioning on some stuff. Like, you're starting to sound like, I think maybe she didn't say Fox News. She said you're starting to sound like Republicans. It's like, or maybe he's just sounding like someone who has some questions that you need to answer. But if someone presses you, oh, you sound like an enemy, you sound like my enemy, or maybe people who are journalists who should be, they're not impartial, but at times of moments when their brain just kind of fritzes and they're like, let me be honest, and they ask an honest question, then it's like, you're a Republican. You're like, why are you, asking these things, like going off script? So they like the people who are nice to them. And that's, that's why Biden and all of them can laugh like, oh, it's so funny that they treat me differently. And we all know everyone's in on the joke. And I think that's sad. I think that's really sad. So that's why I wanted to play that one. But this clip, I saw it making its round. Actually, Now This shared it. Now This shared it on Twitter, but I saw them share it on TikTok. So it popped in my feed. I don't follow them, but that is ended up popping up in my algorithm. So this section about CRT and Clarence Thomas. So you guys, if you followed me for a while, I used to talk about CRT like all the time. So let's get back to it.
Y'all would be surprised, man, if y'all would just be real about what CRT is. You can be surprised. Some black folks might meet you halfway.
So already stopping right there. So he's correct that a lot of black people, if they hear about what critical race theory is, that they're on board with being against it. Now, he has no idea what it is. Or if he does know what it is, he's lying. He's about to lie to you about what it is. But yes, there are plenty of black people that if you explain what it is and if you talk about what it is and what the tenets are, etc., they'll be like, that sounds a bit messed up. I don't like that. I don't like that. I'm sure you guys have seen like viral videos of black parents at different meetings saying, I don't want my kids learning that they are a victim. Now, that's not how that they're going. He's going to pitch it like what CRT is. And then he's going to go into territory that I think is kind of racist. So, but if he were honest, I'm a black person. I don't like CRT, and I honestly know what it is. The claim is like Republicans aren't honest, and he made some other jokes like they don't know what it is either. And I think there's probably a lot of people who don't actually know what it is, but I think a lot of people who are supporting it don't know what it is. But there's also people who kind of have an idea, but they don't know how to articulate it. That's different than not knowing what it is. Sometimes people, they just don't know how to explain stuff. Or they don't know how to explain their feelings. I'll write posts about stuff or do different TikToks, and people will say, thank you for explaining it in this kind of way. I didn't know how to kind of word my thoughts and my feelings and articulate in the way that you did. So not everyone can explain things well, can articulate things well, but that doesn't mean that they don't have some kind of idea what it is. And maybe it's just some kind of idea, and maybe they haven't done the deep research and they've seen like a video or two or whatever and can just kind of explain it just a little bit. But and we'll get to what it is if you're waiting, like, does she know? Yeah, I know what it is. And actually, I'm going to read a little bit out of Critical Race Theory and Introduction. Okay, we're just going to read a little bit today. But yes, I know what it is. And plenty of people, once they look at it, don't actually like what it is, including black people. So let's continue watching.
But you got to tell the truth. You can't lie to black people. Call it what it is. Anti-CRT policies are an attack on black history and an attempt to erase the contributions of black people from the history books.
So he just lied, or maybe he didn't lie. Maybe he doesn't know. So maybe he's ignorant. Again, he's a comedian. Be like, oh, she's fact checking jokes. It's not a joke. That's just a lie. Comedians, they will say things that they'll exaggerate the truth in a way that exaggeration so much that maybe it's the story's not real anymore, but there's some kind of truth that they're exaggerating for some kind of greater purpose or whatever. Like they're jesters who make fun of stuff. This is just propaganda right here. And he'll get into his joke. The joke isn't that Republicans are lying. That's not the joke. The joke will follow. But to say that it's just about teaching history, honest history about Black people or Black contributions or what happened to Black people, that's not it at all. And I've seen like CNN and other folks bring on people to explain critical race theory, and they'll explain it's a worldview. It's a lens on how to view the world. So people who actually know what it is and support it know that it's not about teaching honest history. Only these people who don't know what it is, who are shilling for it, think that it's about teaching honest history. That's absolutely not what it is. So we'll keep watching.
That's what it is. You are trying to erase Black people, and a lot of Black people wouldn't mind some of that erasure as long as that Black person is Clarence Thomas. A billionaire named Harlan Crow is flying Clarence Thomas all over the world on unreported trips, like an Instagram model, taking Clarence to the Maldives and the beaches and all. Paid for his mama's house, this billionaire. Paid for Clarence Thomas' mama's house. I gotta give it up to billionaires. Billionaires, boy, y'all are relentless. Y'all always come up with something new to buy.
So, Clarence Thomas. So I saw a white woman had retweeted this clip, and I said, the only reason why you make jokes like this and believe certain stuff like this is because you don't actually value Blackness or being Black. We won't say Blackness, I'll say being Black. You don't actually find virtue in being Black, which it's just, melons. You really shouldn't. But it's all about the ideology that they attach to it. So if you don't have a certain ideology, they can kick you out. So that's why he can say these things about Clarence Thomas while being at the White House Correspondence Dinner for Joe Biden, who said, if you have any trouble like deciding between me and Trump, then you ain't Black. It's pretty racist. And a white woman can retweet it and gleefully. So if you just want to kick out people or erasing people from history, there's so many people that you could erase from history or Black culture that, have done like heinous things, throughout time and society. What about like people we uplift, who are drug dealers and all kinds of stuff, who are rappers, and we go out and buy their music and, do all kinds of crazy stuff that we uplift. I don't know who all celebrities are there. There's some celebrities in that room though that probably haven't done the best of things, but are glitz and glamored, and they get invited to those fancy parties, or they get Oscars, or I don't know, all kinds of awards and whatnot. But Clarence Thomas, what is it exactly that has upset you so? And if you look at Clarence Thomas's history, if you have Daily Wire Plus, maybe you still have it rolled over from the time you got What is a Woman, which is my case. It just keeps renewing. One of the best things to watch, and maybe one of the most important things to watch that I think you could watch if you have that app, is Created Equal, and it's about Clarence Thomas. So I think What is a Woman is probably number one, and maybe Created Equal is number two. Take the time, if you have Daily Wire, to go watch that and learn a little bit about his history, his background. It's very fascinating, learning about his lifestyle growing up, struggles he faced, how he was like really a big kind of radical, like a left-wing radical. At one point, he was very jaded about the racial struggles within our country, to the point where he had just hardened his heart and crossed some lines that was driven to a place of hatred to a point where he didn't really recognize himself, and he had to ask God in his heart to undo the hatred that he had, and then he really started studying and refined his philosophy, his political philosophies, or judicial philosophies, and became the man who he is. And the background with his case, of when he became, the Supreme Court justice, it is pretty interesting. It was especially interesting learning that the NAACP at first was going to like not be involved at all with Clarence Thomas and his confirmation hearing. But they decided to get back in because, the feminist groups or whatever wanted to go after him because they figured he was a threat to an abortion. Haha. They were right. And so they wanted to go after him. And so they needed some cover. So they couldn't attack the black man until other black people said it was okay. So the NAACP came out against him, and then the white women could have at it. The women could have at it. That's what they do, especially on the left. Like, and then, because you got people like, Joy Reid and other folks who come out so hard for different like Republican politicians who are black and so on. Then you get the white liberals who feel like they can say any sort of thing out of pocket. The most racist garbage that it's possible will be spewed by white liberals because they feel like they're empowered because some other black person on their side said it first. So, speaking from experiencing that. So, people were so mad at Clarence Thomas, especially with the Roe v. Wade thing. And people were so mad just about the ruling. And I understand people thought it was a law for like 50 years, right? Or it was a precedence for 50 years and so on. And they're like, oh, our rights gone. It wasn't a constitutional right, etc. But I'm like, look at the ruling. Like, what's the actual problem with the ruling? And people didn't even want to really focus on that. But they were just mad about it, though. They're just mad about it. And so, and I get it why you're mad. It doesn't mean it was right that it existed for all this time. But what he went through with the Anita Hill thing, which by the way, my parents were Democrats at the time when that all went down, and they still didn't believe in Anita Hill. A majority of people didn't believe in Anita Hill. There's polling that was done, like they did not believe in Anita Hill and her story, but people bring it up like it was a fact that he like assaulted her or something like that. It's like, no, people thought she was lying back then, or the story. And you know what? When people came to the authorities came to his house to like question him about it, they didn't seem to think there was any there either. But it blew up, and then they had to do this confirmation hearing. And Joe Biden was present and there for the high-tech lynching of Clarence Thomas. And man, Kennedy with his Chattahoochee, bridge self. Clarence Thomas said his wife said she was like so mad watching them treat her husband that way, knowing what Kennedy had did to that girl, left her to drown. And those people have had the nerve to kind of try to destroy him. Not kind of. They wanted to destroy him. And so he mentioned, I don't have the clip offhand right now, but he said there is no job in the world like that is worth this sort of, scrutiny that they were giving him, the attacks that they were throwing on him. But he was continuing to go on with it because of principle, I suppose, standing up for himself, standing against what they were doing. So not cool. Not cool. There's so many awful people in this world, and the person that they hate so much is Clarence Thomas. But they'll march and they'll destroy cities over their own communities for criminals, over controversial shootings and stuff of police. And I'm not saying that those things are right. We could peacefully protest, but people were like burning down communities. Do you guys remember when Rashard Brooks thing popped out and people were like rioting, and there was a video of people going around and they got to a Waffle House and they're like, hey, not the Waffle House, man, keep going. So I'm like, oh, so you guys you're cognizant enough that you're not just like monsters going around destroying everything. You know not to go to the Waffle House because that's your spot, but everything else you're gonna loot and raid and destroy. Okay. And I saw a video that someone had reposted not too long ago of this girl who was a BLM activist who said that it's okay if Black people loot and rob things because that's their reparations. And that was during that whole riot time. There's just so many like trash ideologies and people and stuff that we uplift, and they want to blot out like Clarence Thomas. What about the whole like BLM movement, started by trained Marxists? That's their wording. And they uplift everyone except a Black father. Took all this money to enrich themselves over ideologies and stuff that aren't even true, while they want to like destroy cisgender privilege and disrupt the nuclear family. That was in their What We Believe page, by the way. But people still have BLM, in their profiles. But Clarence Thomas is like the awful one. Okay. Anyway, let's get to the CRT stuff, because they said that the CRT is just about teaching honest history. So there's so many narratives about CRT that is pretty crazy, because they're like, one, it's not in schools. That's what they claim. But they're mad that people want to take it out of schools. So it is absolutely in schools, different schools. But I can speak for my state, and the superintendent of Detroit Public Schools said that they purposely integrate critical race theory into like all their curricula. So there's some evidence for you right there. I don't have the clip queued up. I've played it several times, and I'm sure when I clip this video, I will have that little thing in there. But yes, there are people who are actually like teaching critical race theory now. But people will say it's about teaching honest history, but the people who teach CRT or support CRT, who know stuff about it or knowledgeable about it, will say, well, it's a legal theory. They teach it in like college and stuff. So I'm a little confused. Is it about history, or is it not about history? Is it history or not history? It's obviously not about history. And people also say it's a lens, it's a worldview. If it's a theory about a worldview, why is it teaching honest history? I'm a little fuzzy on the details. They're not all making sense. So we will get to CRT and read a little bit about it. 1 second. Here we go. So this book I'm reading is Critical Race Theory, an Introduction. So it's pretty simple. And this is kind of like the go-to book. So 1 second. Trying to just find the What We're About page. Not what we're about, but what is critical race theory. Explain it and the tenets. I think I passed it. Hold on. Again, a lot of people can't explain this stuff and maybe have a little bit of awareness of it, but maybe they can't explain it very well. And but a lot of people defend this stuff and they don't know what it is in the least bit. And I talked about how I went to a Democrat Party picnic and they were talking about CRT a lot in it. And so, and how Republicans were coming against it and using it to fill the school boards and stuff. So they didn't know I was a Republican, but after it was over, I went to the Democrat, Oakland County chair, and I was like, is this a hill that Democrats really want to die on with critical race theory? I'm like, I don't know how much you know about it or anything, but like, it's not good. And she's like, it's just racism. It's just racism. But she meant like the opposition to it was racism. I'm like, no, critical race theory is racism. And I start like breaking it down a little bit. And She admitted to me that she didn't look up into it. She doesn't know anything about it, really. So I'm the authority, at least the conversation. I sound like I'm the authority on the matter because I've looked into it and she hasn't. She admitted that. And so eventually she just dismisses me. She's like, it's just racism. I've gone to these things and the people that there's the stuff that they spew, or I can look into their eyes and I see the racism and the evil or whatever, and saying stuff like that. And I'm just thinking, you see I'm black and you're trying to manipulate me by saying these people are racist. And I've been to these events too. I've seen these people. I've actually been to events and I've talked to these parents and taught them about critical race theory and how it is integrated. It's not just in your kid's school. It's in their TV. It's in the Democrat Party platform. It's in the movies. It's everywhere. It's incorporated in our industries, right? And once you know what it is, you can kind of see why, because it's not about teaching on its history. It is a movement. It is an ideology. Excuse me. So what is critical race theory? Critical race theory, CRT movement, is a collection of activists and scholars interested in studying and transforming the relationship among race, racism, and power. When you think about history, and you send your kid to school, are you thinking about dates, times, locations? This thing happened, that thing happened, etc. Isn't that kind of like, what you expect when your kid's learning about history? Okay, the movement considers many of the same issues that conventional civil rights and ethnic studies discourses take up, but places them in broader perspective that includes economics, history, context, group and self-interest, and even feelings and the unconscious. Sounds like more than history. And here's a big section. This is quoted a lot. Unlike traditional civil rights, which embraces incrementalism and step-by-step progress, so unlike civil rights movement, like moving forward in a good, positive direction, right? They're saying unlike that. Critical race theory questions the very foundations of the liberal order, including equality theory, legal reasoning, Enlightenment rationalism, and neutral principles of constitutional law. So this idea that we could just, be neutral. Okay? So this doesn't sound like history, right? I'm reading right out their book. Although CRT began as a movement in the law, it has rapidly spread beyond that discipline. Today, so when people say it's just a legal theory, it says right there, you guys can't see it, I don't have it pulled it up, but I'm reading it. It says that it's now beyond the legal stuff. So people are like, it's just something you learned in law school. They don't think so. Today, many of the field of education consider themselves critical race theorists who use CRT's ideas to understand issues of school discipline and hierarchy, tracking controversies over curriculum and U.S. history, and IQ and achievement testing. So you guys have probably heard a lot about people getting rid of different tests or like different school standards and stuff. That's probably why. When they say stuff like, too many of the brown people aren't doing well, I'm like, that's really racist. Political scientists ponder voting strategies coined by critical race theorists. Ethnic studies courses often include a unit on critical race theory, and American studies departments teach material on critical white studies developed by CRT writers. Unlike some academic disciplines, this is a good one. Unlike some academic disciplines, critical race theory contains an activist dimension. It not only tries to understand our social situation, but to change it. It sets out not only to ascertain how societies organizes itself along racial lines and hierarchies, but to transform it for the better. So this is a whole darn like ideology, religion almost, right? And it was so funny. I wrote an article on blackteennews.com about how people are like, it's only in college, it's not in the schools. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense because these people have an entire worldview and they want to change the world, right? And if you want to change the world, the whole darn world, are you going to wait for the off chance that a child goes through their whole life, going through elementary school, middle school, high school, and then they decide to go to college. And then after they go to college, they go to law school, right? You're going to take the chance that you wait all that time for them to get in law school so you can indoctrinate them on this whole principle that you want to change the whole freaking world? No, you don't do that. Like, if you're a Christian, I'm a Christian, you evangelize every chance you get, if you're a good one, anyway. Some people just keep it to themselves. And so every conversation you have with people, like, sometimes you want to worm it in somewhere, you know, about the goodness of God, or this happened in church, or blah, 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 some kind of scripture. Like, you're looking for opportunities to tell of the goodness of God or something. So if you have something that's important and you want to transform the world, like, you go through all kinds of different ways, nooks and crannies. So I mentioned that it's in the Democratic platform. It is. If you go to their platform and you look at Soul of America, Saving the Soul of America, there's a section in there about how they can't solve the problems with neutral policies, like neutral law race policies or whatever. So they acknowledge that you have to make things unfair to build the sort of utopia that they want to build. So that's there. I've showed clips of like stuff on Cartoon Network and other places where they have like CRT kind of like ideology, but it's definitely in your kids' schools. And I'm not saying they're in all the schools, but they are in schools, and people will pretend they're not. Joy Reid's like, it's not in schools, but then you'll have like Kimberly Crenshaw, who will go to events and they'll talk about critical race theory insights. So they're not teaching everything, but are they teaching like bite-sized things to indoctrinate your kids and get them ready for that? Yes, they are. Yes, they are. So that's a bit, let me skip a little bit forward. And they do talk about spinoffs and stuff. So people like white fragility and stuff, like that stuff is like spinoffs. People try to in anti-racism and stuff by Abraham X. Kendi. That stuff is a spin-off stuff. After that stuff started getting more scrutiny, people are like, oh, it's not, that has nothing to do with CRT. Those are spin-offs. They are. So basic tenets of critical race theory. What do critical race theorists believe? Probably not every member would subscribe to every tenet set out in this book, but many would agree on the following propositions. First, that racism is ordinary, not an aberrational, normal science, than the usual way of society does business, the common everyday experience of most people of color in this country. So I think Obama said racism is in our DNA. So they believe it's just an ordinary everyday thing. Everybody experiences racism. Second, most would agree that our system of white over color ascendancy serves important purposes, both psychic and material. The first feature, ordinariness, means that racism is difficult to cure or address. Colorblind or formal conceptions of equality expressed in rules that insist only on treatment that is the same across the board can thus remedy only the most blatant forms of discrimination, such as mortgage redlining or refusal to hire a Black PhD, and attract our attention. So they're saying, like, again, that neutral race policy thing maybe can solve like a little bit, but not really like the bigger stuff. Or maybe those are things they consider bigger stuff, but like microaggressions, all that kind of stuff. Just having equal footing with people isn't going to solve racism and create fairness and equality in the world. So again, that's why you're hearing a lot of people talk about equity instead of equality, because they don't really like equality, you know. They want to have equity to achieve equality, but they know you can't really do that because you can't treat people unfairly and call it equality. The second feature, sometimes called interest convergence or material determination, adds a further dimension because racism advances the interests of both white elites materially and working class people psychically. Large segments of society have little incentive to eradicate it. Consider, for example, Derek Bell's shocking proposal discussed in a later chapter that Brown versus Board Education, considered a great triumph in the civil rights litigation, may have resulted more from the self-interest of elite whites than a desire to help blacks. So So, and we talked about this not too long ago. It was because it's Scott Adams. They're saying that, okay, so racism is ordinary. It's just how we do business, just how things are. And even if we have neutral race policies, that's not going to do anything to get rid of racism. And by the way, white people benefit from racism, so they don't even really want to get rid of it. And even at times when it looks like they want to be fair and get rid of racism, they're just doing that to serve their own self-interest. It's not because they're not really racist. So I brought this up with Scott Adams not too long ago because he brought up this. I don't want to go to the whole story, but he got in trouble with the world and canceled, really, because he brought up this survey or poll or whatever that Rasmussen who did it? I'm not saying that word right. But they asked a question like, is it okay to be white? And there was an alarming amount of Americans that, according to the polling anyway, that wouldn't say or didn't know. So when you broke it down by race, it wasn't a majority, but it was close. It was like about half of Black people were in the no, it's not okay, and I'm not sure camp. And so he's like, that's kind of a hate group, isn't it? So people were really, really mad at that and other comments he made. But he also said, like, there's no point in, like, he said, if Black people don't like white people, you might as well just pack up and leave. Like, just get away. They don't like you. And there's no point in doing anything because they'll still not like you. And so people were very upset that he said this, and I can understand that it was upsetting. And I'm like, he's got to know that this is going to, like, end a lot of things for him. Like, people are going to cancel him for this. But he did say some things to spark a conversation. And he said, he had an interesting interview and he said, I realize the price of free speech is high and not everyone is willing to pay it. So he said he was willing to pay it. I'm like, that's very interesting. But was he wrong when you look at critical race theory? So he basically got canceled for, like, a perspective on critical race theory, because it's like, well, the people are just going to believe that you're racist no matter what, even if you do something kind and something that seems like neutral and you treat people well. They're like, you're just doing that for your own self-benefit. You're not actually doing that because you're not a racist. Does this sound like honest history? Like, and maybe it is for you. Maybe that's your perspective, but this isn't, but it's, this isn't history though. Again, kid goes to school, they learn about, like, dates, times, locations, this event happened, etc. This isn't that. This isn't that. So one person that CNN interviewed, and I have a video about this somewhere back in my archive, about critical race theory. But when they had someone on to talk about it and defend it, they're like, yes, because there's all these trainings. Even if you don't see, like, obvious curriculum for your kids, there are teachers who are going through training that has, like, critical race theory stuff in it. And so she said, can it, influence teachers? And as I'm watching it, like, live, I didn't watch it live, but when I was first watched the video of it for the first time, I'm like, is she going to say, no, it won't, or something, it doesn't have to. That's what I'm thinking she's going to say. But she says, can it influence teachers? Yes. And I'm like, okay, well, is she going to say, but teachers are professionals and they can put that aside and just teach the curriculum? She says, no, it's a good thing that this worldview changes their perspective, because she thinks it's true, because she's bought into it. So a lot of people who support it obviously just already buy into the worldview. So it's not honest history. It is an ideology. So if you don't like this ideology, yes, keep standing up and get out of your kids' schools. Better yet, just take your kid out of public schools and teach them yourselves. I know that's really hard for a lot of people, but man, you're the one putting that risk when you send them off every day. I saw a video today with a teacher mocking a commenter on TikTok because they were upset about stuff. Like, he had a Black Lives Matter flag in his classroom, and he also had the trans inclusion, flag or whatever in his room. And then he showed around the room, and he's like, aha, and there's no American flag either, so you're really gonna be mad. Like, I know there's great teachers out there. I had some good teachers. I had some not good teachers. definitely had some not good teachers, but I had some good teachers, and I know there's good teachers out there. But again, you run that risk when you send your kids to the schools, man. You run that risk, so you might want to rethink some things. So again, with critical race theory, the premise is that people are racist. America, it's in our DNA. White people are racist, and they don't really want to not be racist. They don't have incentive to not be racist. And even when you think they're maybe not being racist, they're still racist. That's CRT. But that's not it. But we'll continue reading. A third theme of critical race theory is the social construction thesis holds that race and races are products of social thought and relations, not objective, inherent, or fixed. They correspond to no biological or genetic reality. Rather, races are categories that society invents, manipulates, or retires when convenient. People with common origins share physical traits, of course, such as skin color, physique, and hair texture. Definitely hair texture. But these constitute only an extremely small portion of their genetic endowment, are dwarfed by that which we have in common, and have little or nothing to do with distinctly human higher order traits such as personality, intelligence, and moral behavior that society frequently chooses to ignore. These scientific facts creates races and endows them with pseudo-permanent characteristics is of one of great interest to critical race theory. So when someone says, or when I say, I don't know how many people, it seems like other people are catching on to this, but I say, if you identify as a different gender, like if Dylan Mulvaney can say he's a woman and then he's a woman, and you're like, okay, well, how come Rachel Dolezal or Ollie London, when Ollie London said he was Korean, why was that bad? But Dylan can say he's a woman, right? And they'll say, well, gender is a social construct. It's not. Right? The etymology of the word, like sex and gender, they're not just intertwined, they're used interchangeably. Like, this is just kind of a newer thing. Your idea that gender is a social construct is a social construct, but race being a social construct, that's actually something that's out of the tenets or whatever. That's one that's actually not very controversial. So if you're a person on the left and you're like, oh, critical race theory is great, okay, well, it says that race is a social construct. So if Dylan Mulvaney can be a woman because a woman is a social construct, how come Ollie London, y'all were so mad when he said he was Korean? Why were y'all so mad at Rachel Dolezal when she said she was black? If it's just a social construct. Questions. Okay, another somewhat more recent development concerns differential racialization, and its many consequences. Critical writers in law, as well as social science, have drawn attention to the ways a dominant society racializes different minority groups at different times in response to shifting needs, such as labor market. At one period, for example, society may have had little use for blacks, but much need for Mexican or Japanese agricultural workers. At another time, the Japanese, including citizens of long-standing, may have been in intense disfavor and removed to war relocation camps, while society cultivated other groups of color for jobs in the war industry or as cannon fodder on the front. Popular images of stereotypes of various minority groups shift over time as well. In one era, a group of color may be depicted as happy-go-lucky, simple-minded, and content to serve white folks a little. Oh, by the way, that's funny that they brought that up. They're not totally wrong, but these people who push critical race theory, there's racism in this world for sure, but a lot of these folks are the ones who are racist. So that sparked a memory, and in the Clarence Thomas documentary they talked about this. But and if you're older, probably older than me, perhaps you'll remember that they portrayed Clarence Thomas, who I believe has written more opinions than everyone else. If I'm not mistaken. They portrayed him as like being Scalia's shoe shine boy. Like he was carrying water for him. Like he was the dumb Negro submitted to the Italian guy. That's how they portrayed Clarence Thomas. Very brilliant man. Maybe you don't like the conclusions he comes to. That doesn't mean he's not smart and gifted and talented, etc. That's how the media portrayed him. So they had skits like that on SNL where they try to diminish his intelligence because he can't possibly be a competent black person that you disagree with. So they're not wrong. They're not wrong that at times our society does these things and have done these things. And it continues to do these things. I will not be like, oh, there's no racism, et cetera, blah, blah, blah. There is. But a lot of people who are decrying it are responsible for it. A lot of people decrying it and claim they want to fix things are responsible for it. So, again, if you haven't seen that documentary, go on Daily Wire and watch Created Equal. But that's something they used to do. To him particularly. But they continue to do. The very same group may appear in cartoons, movies, and other cultural scripts as menacing, brutish, and out of control, requiring close monitoring and repression. Closely related to, I didn't want to read all this. I just want to get to the next part. I'm going to skip a little bit and get to the final element. I guess I'm glad I read that section though. It set me off. A final element concerns the notion of unique voice of color coexisting in somewhat uneasy tension with anti-essentialism. The voice of color thesis holds that because of their different histories and experiences with oppression, Black, Indian, Asian, and Latino writers, they didn't have Latinx at the time, and thinkers may be able to communicate to their white counterparts matters that our whites are unlikely to know. Minority status, in other words, bring with it a presumed competence to speak about race and racism. The legal storytelling movement urges Black and brown writers to recount their experiences with racism and the legal system to apply their own unique perspectives to assess lawmasters' narratives. This topic, too, is taken up later in the book. So this idea that you got to uplift voices of color. And when people say people of color, they just mean not white people. And, I mean, they literally just spelled it out there. So white people can experience racism too, but people don't want to admit that. They want to think that only white people can basically commit racism because they're the only ones who possess institutional power, right? I wonder if people stopped aborting their babies, maybe we could amass some more institutional power, but whatever. But white people can experience racism and discrimination, and people of different heritages can experience different struggles. Man, if you hear Italian people talk about different histories that their family went through, the discrimination they went through in the United States, or Irish people talking about, different stuff that they went through, or just look at the history of that. Not every Black person experiences life in a similar way, or racism in a similar way. Man, so many immigrants come over from like Africa and stuff and just like hate us. Just hate us because they think we're so entitled and spoiled and blowing our opportunities that we got here living up, through America, and their family came in with like 2 nickels to rub together, and now they're graduating college and have good jobs, and they're just like those lazy Americans, those lazy, Americans who grew up here don't know what they have and are kind of just blowing it. And I'm not saying everybody feels that way, but I've met some Africans with some really funky attitudes about Black people who are multi-generational. I'm sure people in the comments can probably relate or know people in that situation and speak to that. So so what do we have here between all the tenets? Again, racism in America is ordinary. White people benefit from race. The system benefits white people, so they have no incentive to end racism. They don't really want to end racism. And when it looks like maybe they want to, they're just really doing things to benefit themselves. So the white people are the oppressors. They're you can't trust them. They're insincere when they say that they want to do something good, because it's all really still about them. And so they're the oppressors. And obviously Black people of color are oppressed. if the system is set up to not benefit you, it's set up to put you at a disadvantage, and no one genuinely wants to help you. So yes, when you, going back to what the comedian said originally, that there are people who, black people, if you were honest about what critical race theory is, then black people would get on board and be against it. He lied about what critical race theory is, but he wasn't wrong that people would be against it if they knew what it was. Now, there's plenty of people who will read through that and be like, absolutely, I agree with everything that's there. Yeah, you bought into the ideology. Yeah, sure. There's plenty of people who are like, I don't want to raise my child as a victim. And then all this like victimhood and stuff, like, oh, you're the oppressor, I'm the victim, and now we have to uplift the voices of that victim, so the white people who are oppressing them can understand. So it's just a continuous cycle of I don't know, mental abuse and racism and evil and oppression, etc. again and again and again, again and again and again. So they're not like, so the civil rights movement that promotes like moving forward in a positive direction. They're the people who want to tear down the institutions because they're bad. When you hear people talk about like, our Constitution is trash, it wasn't written for black and brown people, or what, they'll say stuff like that. But so they're like, let's just scrap it. And it's like, I don't trust what you'll do with it going forward. I like what it, yeah, we can definitely say there's been heinous times in our history where we didn't live up to the truth that was supposed to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. The Dred Scott case, are like, we weren't talking about you black folks when we did that. Like, so it's monstrous, the sort of things that we have done, but that doesn't mean that we haven't progressed forward in a positive direction. Now I don't trust what you would do going forward if we scrapped the Constitution and made a new one. Absolutely not. I'm glad that it does apply to me, right? I have my rights that are in the I have those rights. They're not guaranteed by the Constitution. They're just like, say that they limit the powers of the federal government. My rights are God-given. I know people's like, oh my gosh, leave religion out of it. It's literally what it says in the Declaration of Independence. Okay. If you just want to think of them natural rights, they're natural rights, but it does say they're God-given rights. It just means that we come into existence with these rights. That's what it means. You don't have to be religious. So anyway, that's what CRT is. Not honest history, what he said. So I know, oh, she's correcting a comedian's jokes. It wasn't a joke. It was flat out indoctrination. So there you go. There you go. And I did not mean to spend basically my hour talking about that, but I hope you guys enjoyed the rant. So anyway, moving on. I mentioned already that in critical race theory, it says that that race is a social construct, right? So again, people say that you can switch your gender because gender is a social construct. I don't agree with that, but let's go along with that for now. So there was a city councilman that decided to play their game, and some people are very mad about it. So I thought this was a great story that I had to share.
As transgender and a woman of color. Delaware County Councilman Ryan Webb announced that he now identifies as an Indian American woman. Since that announcement, he's received some support, but a lot of backlash, many calling him childish, despicable, even calling for things like execution. In a statement Webb gave to ITMate, he says, quote, "It is unfortunate that I cannot simply be given the same space and respect to explore my identity that so many of those targeting me demand for themselves. It's possible I may change my mind down the road. The process of identity exploration is complex, and oftentimes at the end of our personal journey, we end right back where we started." Webb goes on to tell ITMate this is just his true, authentic self.
That's hilarious. That's hilarious. Like, why are you making fun of people's pain? Like, no, we're making fun of the absurdity of it, because if he was actually a person who identified as a woman, then that's fine, as if that's possible, as if just imagining it makes it so, or just thinking it makes it so, feeling it just makes it so. It doesn't. It's tied to biology. It is. It just is. And by the way, if you haven't read my article, why cis is a slur, cisgender is a slur. Some of you are like, what is that? Just go read the article. Explains it. That's available at blackteennews.com. Please check out that article. But they find it. So I love that he added the woman of color thing. But people will say that's too far, and that's not the same. It's far less absurd. It's far less absurd for him to identify as a different race than to identify as a different gender. It's far less absurd. It's far less, I mean, we're all like, you know, one race anyway, you know, human race and stuff. So these constructs that we have of race, that it makes sense because that is actually like, there's one Ruby or some guy from the UK. I can't think of his name. There's a very, very viral clip of him, I think, on Tim Pool's podcast talking about how it's actually a spectrum of what you are, black or whatever. People can consider the one drop rule or whatever, or if you're black, or people think about Obama. People say he's black. Is he not mixed? Why do you consider him black? Why is he the first black president? Why don't we call him the first mixed? He technically is, but why don't we call him still another white president? You know? So we have all these different ideas that we attach to race and have been forever. This gender stuff is new. I'm not saying that people identifying or people being transvestites and stuff is new. I'm not saying that, or people who've cross-dressed or had different confusion. I'm not saying that's new, but this idea that sex and gender are somehow unmarried and it makes it legit because its gender is different. That's a new darn idea. Because again, the etymology of the word, they've been used interchangeably. So if it has no, because people say, oh, if you say that gender is based on the chromosomes or the gametes, right? You know, it's a binary. Either you have either the ova or the sperm or whatever that, and you know, your sex is determined in the womb. If you're going to say that it's not based in biology, again, why do people have the surgery? Why do people do the hormones and stuff? If it's just about how you identify, or if it is just like a list of actions or characteristics, which are just like stereotypical anyway, what does it really matter at all? If how you identify, if it's just like, just a list of things, like, oh, you like to wear a dress. Well, you could just be a cross-dresser. It doesn't mean you're a woman. Like, there's lots of women who like to wear dresses, that hate to wear dresses. Oh, I like to wear makeup. There's lots of gay men that like to wear makeup, or just men who are straight, who still, you just put a little bit on, you know, for the cameras or whatnot. Doesn't mean you're a woman. There's lots of women who like to wear makeup. I don't love to wear makeup. Yeah, I don't like to spend more than like 5 minutes on it, you know. Unlike, you know, but that doesn't make Dylan more woman than me or something. That's not, you know, Mulvaney doesn't make you woman. Like, you can list all these like stereotypical things, but if they're totally detached from sex, is there any meaning in it? Is there any meaning in it at all? Because you still do things, physical things to your body to try to mimic a biological reality, because you know that they're meaningfully intertwined. And then you try to pair up trans people and Tampax, you know, Dylan doing the Tampax stuff or whatever. He can't have a period. So what is this about? You continue to blur the lines, to try to deny biology, to just be like nature doesn't matter. That's really what it's about. Like a rebellion of nature or God's design or whatever. That's what it's about. And that's why, you know, even if you're not passionate about this issue or whatever, I think you still need to take a firm line in the sand and be like, I'm not using your pronouns. I'm not, you know, you can't come in my bathroom. Even if you're not afraid that people are going to come in and do stuff, even if you don't think it's a safety issue, don't allow them to come in your bathrooms. Which, by the way, there's a crazy story that I got to talk about. I don't have time today, but it's pretty heinous. I'll table it because it's important. So I will give it the time that it deserves. But things that make it go about, it's something about a woman's prison in the Biden administration. I'll probably do a short TikTok about it first and then go into it longer another day. But people recognize that they're intertwined. They're meaningfully intertwined. Obviously they are. And if there was no meaning, if it had nothing to do with sex, and nothing to do with biology, it would just be a meaningless term. Be a meaningless term. Last thing, gosh, we are really over though. So I think I'll table this Chuck Todd thing as well, until tomorrow. No, we can go into it. It's okay. It's okay. I won't stay on it that long. There's not that much to say that hasn't been said, I think. So we'll watch it. So this is Chuck Todd doing an interview about gender ideology.
Age of 18, I think it's perfectly legitimate to say that we won't allow genital mutilation or chemical castration through puberty blockers for the purpose of gender transition.
But how do you know it's that? Again, how do you know, are you confident that you know that gender is as binary as you're describing it? Are you confident that it isn't a spectrum?
Mr. Journalist, Mr. So-called journalist, if it's not binary, like, what's the other? Binary means there's two. So what's the other like gamete? Like, what is it? If it's not the ovum and the sperm, what else is there? What is there? What is there? If it's not how many are there? Do you believe that there's like 100 and whatever, or 70, whatever numbers people say that how many there are? Like, when does it stop? Is there it just limitless? You know? Come on, like, these people play these games. They know better.
You know this as a scientist?
Well, there's two X chromosomes.
Oh, appeal to authority there. Do you know this as a scientist? Do you know this as a scientist that there's a binary? What? Why do we have sex education in school? Other than to indoctrinate kids and to feel more comfortable with sex. That's what it's really for. We'll get into all that another day. Because it's not to teach you things and make you knowledgeable and smart. It's to indoctrinate you. That's what it's for. As a scientist, and you know what? There's a video I replied to on TikTok where someone was they's like, I'm a biologist and it's spectrum, blah blah blah, and he was just saying some stuff that was just that was crazy. And he's like, you have to go beyond biology and you have to go talk about he said all these other kind of things. I'm just like, what about the etymology of the word and its meaning and its origin and its use? What about those things? Now people the gender, like the feminists, like they began to kind of separate the word because they didn't like particular gender roles. And so a lot of these women who don't like all the stuff going on, you kind of started opening the door to your demise, just letting you know a little bit, especially with the second wave stuff, you know. So you made some errors there. However, sex and gender still used interchangeably, still, and you know, and I think they're kind of using it, kind of not using it a little bit in that interview too, but interchangeably in that sense. But again, even if you don't want to use them interchangeably and you go by definitions, even if like different definitions that woke people have that they reference, they're still an attachment that they're, again, meaningfully intertwined. If people who think that gender has nothing to do with the actual sex, which is binary, which some people want to deny that's just not true.
If you're a woman, an X and a Y, that means you're a man.
So there's a lot of scientific research out there. There's a lot of scientific research out there that says gender is a spectrum.
Chuck, I respectfully disagree. Gender dysphoria for most of our history, all the way through the DSM-5, has been characterized as a mental health disorder, and I don't think it's compassionate to affirm that. I think that's cruelty. When a kid is crying out for help, what they're asking for is, you got to ask the question of what else is going wrong at home? What else is going wrong at school? Let's be compassionate and get to the heart of that, rather than playing this game as though we're actually changing our medical understanding for the last 100 years.
I go back to this. If a parent is dealing with a child that has these, that may have these issues, trust me, the last thing they want to do is consider something like this. But if
I wish that were true. And you know, it's true for a lot of parents that I don't know if this is the last thing they want to consider, but they they consider it because they want to do right by their kid. And I think most people maybe want to do that, but that doesn't mean that there aren't parents who aren't putting their own feelings or wanting to be accepted or had feelings themselves that they wanted to transition. So they're kind of like inflicting on their kid, or they want attention, or they want fame or whatever. That just because parents care for the kids doesn't mean that they're all doing right by their kids for their mental health or whatever. So there are parents that don't treat this like the last resort thing. And even if there are parents who treat it like the last resort, they will be bullied by society, and they will emotionally blackmail them. And they'll say, oh, if you do not affirm, your kid will unalive themselves. And he'll like bring that up too.
If that is what they think could help their child pursue happiness, or they're not to kill themselves, why take away that option? Again, why shouldn't it be up to the parent?
So part of why parents now suddenly feel that way, let's ask ourselves that, Chuck, is we've created a culture that teaches parents that they're being bigoted or that they're bad people if they don't actually take those steps. So part of what I think is, listen, gender dysphoria, for the rare few people who have suffered it, is a condition of suffering. My question is, why on earth are we going out of our way to create even more of it? And there's no doubt that the cultural movement in this country, even education, is creating more gender dysphoria. If it's a condition of suffering, let's not create more of it. That's what we're doing.
So, I love Newsbusters clipping all these clips. He handled that very well. The interview very well, and he's right. We are creating a culture where more people are jumping on the trend. Like it's a trend. There's a social contagion element there, and you're creating more people who will have this dysphoria. And I'm not even saying that they may have other things wrong with them, and then they will self-diagnose and be misdiagnosed as far as gender dysphoria. But even in like Abigail Schreier's book, when they talk about the social contagion, they don't allege in the book that all these people who are kind of or at least some of the people who are caught on the craze, that they don't actually have some kind of dysphoria. But the question is it originating kind of in the original way that they've seen? Because it used to mostly be like you'd see it like throughout life with young boys or something, and they come out as trans or something, and there's early childhood things that you'd notice and stuff, and you take time to really kind of sort this out, and you'd see that they had some kind of dysphoria. Now you're seeing a lot of older girls who maybe didn't have anything in their background, and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm trans, and they don't allege that they don't have some kind of dysphoria, but is it like a traditional kind of rooted way? How is it coming about? So those are the questions. But we do have an element of a social contagion here. I shared on YouTube, like on a post, that I watched a video of a friend of mine who talked about her gender dysphoria, and she's a lesbian, but she said she grew up in today's time that she probably would have transitioned. And she really, really wanted to be a boy. And she lives with discomfort in her body every day. And she really wanted to be a boy. And she said she probably would have transitioned and probably would have ended up regretting it. And she's glad that, she doesn't live in today's time. But listening to her story and her talk about her discomfort, and it's just really heartbreaking. And listening to it and just thinking about what people go through in her situation, I began to cry. And I thinking about like how we uplift it today. Like people say, oh, we need so much representation on this and there, etc., blah blah blah, in the movies and entertainment, and I'm like, this is something you need to really gatekeep, not celebrate. Like, and I said, like, if you're winning a prize in a box of Lucky Charms, it's not what it's like. It's not what it should be like, one video on TikTok really just like haunts me. There's these girls in a park, and they were just, I don't know what was going on in the park or whatever, but they're the only ones who seem to be paying attention to this group of girls. And one girl gets up and says, I'm a boy. And they all just start clapping. And it's so sad. It's so sad because one of the things about the gender contagion and stuff, you see it happening in friends groups, and a lot of them are in families and or people who have like leftist sort of views. Not saying that doesn't happen in red states or red areas or something, but you do see like a pattern. And a lot of these parents will be like gung-ho for it at first or supportive at first. And then they'll get kind of deep in it and be like, I've made a mistake. But then they're afraid to turn back because they're afraid their child will now self-harm. But you have a friends group and they're all into this and they're applauding. These girls are applauding the fact that another girl doesn't want to be a girl. But that's who you are. It's what you are. And they're just so excited. Elon Musk had tweeted something and he said, if you continuously hate on something, people will not want to be that thing. I'm paraphrasing it. If I could find it real quick. I think I retweeted it maybe. I think that's just the gist of the line. I don't know if it's worth me looking up, but I guess now I'm in the process. But I'm like, if we condemn women, if we put them down, if we hypersexualize them, like there's people who are trans and detransition and said that they didn't like being sexualized, especially as they were going through growing pains and stuff, and they thought maybe being like trans would help with that, and then they ended up being sexualized and not unsafe anyway. So we're just doing a huge disservice. He said if you are taught to hate yourself, you will become what you want to become someone else. That's what it was. And that's what it is. They really don't want to be girls. It's not, I don't think it's even that they want to be boys or that they think they want to be boys or think they are boys. So many people just don't want to be who they are. And I think it's a tragedy that we'd rather put them on hormones, chop up their body, than getting to the heart of why they actually feel that way. And if you ask questions or want to slow down the process, you got people like Chuck Todd. They're like, oh, what if they kill themselves? Why are you like, not that that's not a concern or whatever, but why are we just normalizing this outcome? Why are we normalizing this outcome? Because now you're expecting it. So I would assume people would be like, in the back of their minds, they're like, well, this is a thing that people in my condition do when they're unhappy or they're not affirmed. And then it kind of gives them an out too, in a sense that it's not my fault. I wasn't affirmed. It's the people's faults who didn't affirm me. So it creates villains. So it's just a continuous cycle of abuse. We're not treating our society healthy at all mentally. So my heart goes out to people who are like my friend, who feel so uncomfortable in their bodies, but it sickens me that we are continuing to spread this contagion. And I don't think there's a lot of people who say they have dysphoria that have it to the point where she has, but she's come to terms with her body. And I pray that everyone can come to terms with themselves, whether you do that through, I don't know, getting some kind of mental help or find Christ. There was the leader of the Rainbow Coalition Redemption Project or something like that. She was trans, and she said that she would have never been trans if she had known what Jesus could do for her. You know, I pray that for people. But what we're doing today, the gender ideology stuff, that is not the way. That is not the way. Anyway, thank you for joining me today. I know we went over, and I know I started late too. So, but thank you for being here. Hope you enjoyed. Please go to blacktnews.com. Check out different content on my website, different articles, different videos, etc. Please check out my book, Of Course God is Blatantly Against Abortion. It's available on paperback. It's available on ebook. Some people have asked overseas if it's available. Yeah, it should, like if you go to Amazon and stuff, like your version of Amazon, it should be there. It does focus, a lot of the numbers and stuff are focused on like US stuff. That doesn't mean like the ideology and the philosophy and all that stuff isn't good or whatever. So if you're from a different country you're interested, you can go ahead and check it out. People have asked about like a hard copy, like a hardback, I guess. I don't have any hardbacks yet. That's something that I will get started on actually. So that'll eventually be coming, but thank you guys for buying it. Really appreciate it. Once you read it, please go ahead and leave a nice review on Amazon and stuff and different places. But I put a lot of heart, soul, love into this, and I'm glad to I want to share something, but I'm going to table it. Someone said something, it was, oh my gosh. I will table it till next time, but it covers science, it covers philosophy, it covers our rights, it covers like imposing one's beliefs, why we need moral absolutes, just the societal harm of abortion, and of course the theology. So a lot of good stuff in there. Again, my baby sister made that wonderful art. She did such an incredible job. So I'm so grateful to her. But go ahead and pick up that book on Amazon. Also check out different merchandise at my store, like these the Constitution is a Glorious Liberty document with my man Frederick Douglass on there. So go ahead and check that out at the store, and other merchandise that we have. And if you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com/donate, cost to stream, run my website, all that good stuff. So I have some needs, some things I'd like to get. And if you can help, I very much appreciate it. If you can't, I thank you guys for watching, for commenting. All that stuff does really help. God bless you guys. And I will see you tomorrow.